Welcome back and settle in. Imagine yourself at the edge of a quiet forest where the air is cool and a soft hush rests on everything, as if the trees have agreed to speak in whispers tonight. You stand at the margin where path becomes understory, then step forward, and the ground itself becomes a gentle quilt of leaves, stitched by stems and settled by time. The light is mild, filtered through a canopy that turns daylight into a steady, tender glow. The forest floor welcomes you with a muted crackle that is not a crackle at all, more like a sigh, a release, 1,000 thin pages turning themselves and then resting, quiet again. If this slow, gentle journey helps you relax, please tap like and subscribe so more calm science can find you. And feel free to start the sleepy playlist linked in the description so the learning can continue softly in the background while you drift. How sleepy are you on a scale of 1 to 10? You draw breath and notice how the air tastes faintly green, a suggestion of resin and fern and something familiar. After rain, that earthy note that arrives when tiny molecules rise from the soil as it is moistened. You ease yourself down onto a comfortable patch of leaf litter, the layers plush beneath you, dry at the top and cooler under the surface, where crumbs of old summer hold on to moisture. The ground yields a little, then supports you, a soft mattress of seasons. Imagine your fingertips brushing aside a few leaves to see how the color shifts as you go deeper, copper to brown to espresso, the edges of each leaf softening until they are no longer edges at all, just a shared texture that flows like felt. The forest floor is a quiet clock. It keeps time in the gentlest way, not with sharp ticks or flashing numbers, but through the slow exchange of light into leaf, leaf into litter, and litter into soil. The gentle rhythm continues. Every leaf that falls begins its patient journey from crisp to crumb to something darker, and each step marks not a day, but a soft count of moments, moisture cycles, and microbial attention. Imagine the canopy above like a slow hand turning pages in a book, and each leaf on the ground like a sentence that 1,000 small readers are tracing with their tiny, patient fingers. When a leaf lets go, it does so because the tree has sensed time, sensed lengthening nights, sensed coolness collecting in the evening hours. At the base of the leaf stem, a quiet layer forms, an abscission seam that loosens and then releases, a gentle goodbye that comes not with sorrow, but with a practiced ease. The leaf, no longer kept supple by the flow of water and sugars, curls a little, stiffens, and turns. On some days, a breeze carries it in an easy spiral, the world turning inside the leaf as the leaf descends. Then it rests with a whisper upon its neighbors. On other days, there is no wind, and the leaf simply lowers itself with gravity's soft hand and nestles into place. This is the beginning of a clock face you can walk across, a calendar underfoot that smells like tea and wood and quiet rain. Imagine months passing, not with any rush, but as the forest breathes. Early on, the litter is a mosaic, a relief distinct and proud of its shape, the lobes of oak and the smooth margins of beech and the elongated forms of willow or poplar in a gentle patchwork. Over time, edges blur the way memory blurs the contour of a day, and the colors deepen as pigments settle into more muted forms, tannins lending a dusky calm. the gentle rhythm continues. Where the sun touches, there is warmth and crispness, and where a fallen branch creates a shadowed pocket, there is coolness and an almost velvet damp. Everywhere, life is working with an unhurried concentration, a laboratory without sharp lights or clattering glass, only steady enzymes and threads of fungi exploring like soft filaments of curiosity. If you lift a corner of this quilt, you find an intimate architecture. There is a top layer, still shaped like leaves, an airy level that lets sound travel through with a faint hush. Beneath that lies a layer where leaves are softened, folded, and stitched together by fine fungal strands and the movements of small, polite creatures. Go deeper still, and shapes dissolve into a rich, granular matrix that glimmers when a slant of light reaches it, not glittering like metal, but shining with the faint sheen of moisture pulled along tiny pathways. That darkness is not empty. It is full of forms that are almost forms, structures that are almost liquid, chemical stories exchanging pieces with one another to become something else. The unexciting alchemy of leaf litter doing its quiet work again and again. Imagine the cast of small residents who visit, who linger, who dine and carry and shred and never hurry. There are springtails, tiny jumpers with an easy hop that looks like curiosity made into motion. There are oribatted mites, armored like seed pearls, moving in measured arcs through their familiar streets of leaf veins and crumbs. There are millipedes, patient and understated, rolling their many legs like a soft conveyor, guiding fragments into smaller shapes. A woodlouse, an isopod with a muted gray shell, feels its way along with methodical calm, gathering what seems to you invisible, and yet to it is a world of texture. An earthworm, pink and unassuming, creates a tube that becomes a hallway that becomes a doorway for air, for water, for roots, for the gentle rhythm to continue. Fungi make their presence known quietly. Imagine threads finer than your hair weaving through the leaf, through the space between cells, touching here, pausing there, exuding enzymes that part the bonds of long molecules with the same patient grace that rain smooths a stone. Some fungi are specialists in the hard-to-read scripts of bark and the sturdy knots of wood. Others prefer the softer lines of the leaf blade, where cellulose waits like a poem printed in familiar glyphs. Certain fungi produce a delicate white softness when the architecture of the leaf gives way, an unhurried blanching that means the most complex parts are being turned gently into simpler parts. The change is neither rapid nor dramatic. It is more like an afternoon where you realized only at dusk how far the light had moved across the room. In the stillness, bacteria hum with invisible practicalities. They are so small that the smallest crumb is for them a landscape of ridges and valleys. They gather in films that are nearly weightless, communities like soft blankets on a cool night, layered and cooperative. They take what fungi and shredding insects reveal, and the story proceeds in smaller and smaller letters until everything once spelled by the leaf becomes a series of elements ready to be borrowed again. Nitrogen, which once lent vigor to green tissue, is released in a measured way, tied up and then set free, never rushed, always with a pause between notes. Phosphorus proceeds with even slower footsteps. Calcium and magnesium drift into the tone of the soil, modulating acidity with the same ease as a whispered reassurance. The forest floor keeps time not by counting, but by letting these processes proceed in a cadence set by temperature, moisture, and the composition of the litter itself. On warm, damp days, the soft chemistries are more conversational, the molecules more sociable, and the work moves a little faster. On cool, dry days, the activity rests, not asleep, just quiet, like someone sitting still with their eyes closed. This is thermal time, a sum of gentle days and gentle nights, a slow tally that can be read by those who know where to look. Ecologists read it with devices and with hands, with bags of leaves placed carefully on the ground to see how mass changes month by month, and with little nets in streams where leaves are carried and softened and then measured for what remains. In gardens and schoolyards, people bury tea bags with quiet amusement, then unearth them weeks later to see what the soil has whispered away, a humble way to listen to time with a teaspoon. Imagine yourself brushing aside a maple leaf and finding beneath it the faint scaffolding of veins now standing without the leaf blade between them, a lacework where the open spaces no longer amplify voice because voice is a whisper here. The veins hold longer because they are stitched together by lignin, a sturdy friend to the forest that takes its time to let go. The sturdier the weave, the more patient the process, as fungi with particular tools arrive to gently unlock those bonds. Meanwhile, some leaves are soft from the beginning, and their stories are brief. They lose mass quickly, like a quiet tale told in one sitting, while others unfold over seasons, a slow series with no cliffhangers, only a steady presence you can visit any time for comfort. There is an order to the material of the forest floor that is not rigid, but it is dependable. At the surface, the old horizon in its freshest form is full of shapes you recognize, and its spaces are full of air. Below that, a fermenting layer where the leaves are changing flavor in the way that compost changes scent as it warms and cools. And farther down, a layer that is nearly unrecognizable as leaves at all, a place where humus forms dark and fine like a chocolate powder with the softness of a sea. This humus is a reservoir for the forest, holding water gently, holding nutrients gently, releasing both back to the roots that reach into it the way hands reach into a basket of smooth stones. Nothing here is hurried. Nothing here is stingy. It is a slow generosity that sustains trunks and branches and the miles of green surface above that quietly convert light each day. Imagine the tree roots when they arrive at this softness. They do not drill or dig. They persuade, moving through the smallest openings, exploring with tips so fine that they can sense the difference between a space that has just seen rain and a space that is about to. These roots carry with them the companionship of symbiotic fungi that extend their reach into even finer threads, sharing signals and sugars and drawing up nutrients in exchange. The conversation between root and fungus is calm and constant, with messages about who is hungry and who has a little extra to share. If you could listen to it, you would not hear words, just a pattern of careful exchange. The gentle rhythm continues. Every moment of that exchange is grounded in what the leaf litter has patiently prepared. If the day is cool, a thin bead of water might collect at the edge of a leaf tip, then slip down to the ground, a small donation. If you tilt your head close to the surface, you can smell the faint sweetness that comes when the first rains of autumn meet dust, and the scent that arrives when microorganisms stretch and become active again. Geosmin, so small a molecule and so large a presence in our sense of Earth, rises like a memory you did not know you kept. On a morning after rain, the surface looks like a map of tiny lakes, each no deeper than a millimeter, and each shrunk to a gloss a few minutes later, as the ground pulls the water inward. That capillary pull is gentle and implacable, another quiet mechanism set by structure and pore size, mediated by how the leaf litter knits itself into layers with pockets and threads and little arches that do not collapse, but hold carefully, like a basket under steady hands. You can see the forest floor keeping time in the way colors pass in waves. In spring, last year's leaves are still visible, but their palette has shifted to umber and quiet browns, and soft greens of moss lay themselves like a ribbon running among them. New leaves above soak up light and cast a green shadow. In summer, the surface dries at times, then darkens again in rainy spells, in a calm alternation of crisp and supple. In autumn, the fresh fall overlays everything with a glowing layer that points to the sky's changing angle. In winter, the process slows to the gentle pace of a sleeping breath, low and steady. And at the thaw, it resumes not as an abrupt start, but as a continuation of a film that paused only for a moment. If you were to set a frame in a square on the ground and return to it with a small notebook, you could see patterns with reassuring regularity. The mass of leaves there would slowly diminish, and the texture would smooth. Threads of fungal hyphae would appear, then recede as their work shifted below. Tiny pellets of soil made by earthworms would appear at the surface like small punctuation marks, telling you that the pages below had been digested and rearranged into lines that water and roots can read more easily. Changes would be slow enough that you could neglect them for a week and come back to find you had missed nothing urgent. This is a place that does not demand attention, but it rewards a lingering gaze. Imagine the carbon in a single leaf, gathered from the air by the tree above, woven into sugars, and then into cellulose, and then into the structures that deepened its green. That carbon now returns to the air in measured breaths from the organisms that eat and metabolize, and some of it settles into the humus where it lingers, held by the soil's fine textures, sometimes for years, sometimes for decades, sometimes longer. The forest floor is a ledger that balances with kindness, not rigidly, just in a way that brings calm to the system. It holds some, it releases some, it never rushes the numbers, and it always listens to temperature and moisture as if they were the hands of a clock, sliding slowly in a circle. In a grove where needles fall, their slender bodies form an insulating mat that smells faintly resinous, and the chemistry leans toward acidic, encouraging a different caste of quiet workers and a different suite of plants that prefer that tone. In a broadleaf forest, the leaves are larger sheets, and their chemistry differs by species, some rich in quick energy, some infused with tannins that slowly soften. The result is a patchwork where one area hums a little faster, and another moves with even greater patience. The forest thus keeps many clocks at once, all harmonizing without conflict, all contributing to a larger, integrated timepiece that marks seasons not as events, but as streams. Imagine now a creek sliding through the trees and carrying with it the gifts of the forest floor. Leaves that land on the surface of the water soften, sink, and become delicate rafts for aquatic fungi and invertebrates. The stream's current adds a gentle rocking that stirs the chemistry, brushing new molecules past the surfaces in a way that bathes the leaf and encourages exchange. Scientists tie bundles of leaves with twine and place them in shaded pools, measuring their mass as a way to hear the pace of the watershed, simple tools for a quiet tempo. The forest extends its timekeeping beyond its floor into its veins of water, and even there, the process remains unhurried and calm. The alchemy here is unexciting in the most comforting way. There are no sparks, no clanging, no cries of surprise. There is an arrangement of minerals and molecules, a choreography of enzymes, a series of exchanges that resemble polite conversation more than argument. A leaf lets go of what it was, and in doing so becomes available for what others need to be. The transformation is low and steady. The gentle rhythm continues. You can close your eyes and still feel it happening around you, like a soft hum you discover when the room is very still. If you look very closely at a fragment under a magnifying lens, you see tunnels the size of pencils in the world of a springtail, galleries shaped by mandibles that never hurry. You see spheres of fungal spores like tiny moons waiting for the next soft landing on a suitable surface. You see crystals of minerals that formed as part of the leaf's own structure, now dissolving with grace. You see films of bacteria that shine faintly when the light hits them just right, not because they are reflective, but because moisture bends the light around them. None of this clamors for attention. It is enough to know it is there, unfolding with the same calm with which you breathe. The forest floor is full of boundaries that are not walls. There is a boundary where oxygen enters and carbon dioxide leaves. There is a boundary where moisture enters and then is held. There is a boundary where the temperature changes by a degree or two with each centimeter of depth. These gentle gradients are the quiet dials of the clock, adjusted by shade, by cloud, by breeze, by the thick or thin layers of litter, and by the shape of the land itself. A slope faces the morning and warms softly earlier. A hollow keeps a little more dew. The clock never fails to keep time because it follows these steady influences, letting them lead without resistance. Imagine an old tree at the center of this scene. Each year it adds a ring of wood, a tight line of growth that a person can count with patience. Around its base, the leaf litter adds its own lines, not crisp rings, but strata that mark the past season's gift. Years of many leaves create thickness. Years of fewer leaves create a finer layer. Insects and fungi, the weather and the slope, weave these contributions together. The tree's age can be traced in its trunk, and the forest's recent life can be felt under your hand as you press gently into the layers and sense the stratigraphy soften and blend. The two clocks dialogue in every quiet moment, wood offering its record in patient circles, leaves offering theirs in the hush of crumb and scent. In a warmer forest, where the humidity is generous and the air is soft year-round, decomposition moves with more eagerness, though never rushed, and the litter does not stack very high. The cycle is swift but still low, a constant exchange that keeps the ground fluffed and aerated. In a colder forest, the litter may linger, building a thicker blanket that helps insulate the ground and create different conditions, friendly to mosses and to certain fungi that enjoy the crispness. In both places, the alchemy remains unexciting and assured. It is the same slow chemistry in different tempos, like two gentle songs in related keys. Imagine yourself counting a year by the events on the ground. Late summer, first yellow leaves appear like quiet flags at the edges. Early autumn, a soft rattle underfoot becomes more frequent, but never loud. Mid-autumn, the ground becomes a mosaic with ritzy colors softened by the shade of branches that are gradually more open to the sky. Early winter, the shapes settle and the palette deepens. Midwinter, the whole surface sees and rests. Early spring, tiny green tongues poke up through openings fed by last year's harvest, and the cycle is ready to repeat. If you could write that year as a lullaby, it would be a tune without sharp notes, its refrain repeating every few days so that you recognize it without having to remember the words. The small animals that visit and dwell here contribute their own gentle movements to the clock. An earthworm brings leaves into the soil and leaves little castings on the surface, which you might see as boat-shaped piles, modest and tidy. Their burrowing aerates the soil, creating channels that, for a drop of rain, is an open road. Millipedes roll their bodies over crumbs and soften them, and the fragments they produce present a larger surface area to fungi and bacteria, a simple principle explained by the smooth way water covers a wide, shallow dish faster than a narrow cup. Woodlice pull at the edges of decaying matter, bringing bits to their mouths with the same deliberate tempo with which you might pluck berries from a bowl. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is forced. To hold yourself quietly at the forest floor is to experience a peaceful kind of time. There is no countdown here, only progression. Leaves give way to a dark material that, when held in your palm, feels almost weightless for how much it can hold. It holds water, like memory. It holds nutrients, like a promise. It holds structure the way a knitted blanket holds warmth. Roots find it. Fungi find it. The next generation of leaves is fed by it, and the entire system leans on it with quiet confidence. This is why the floor of the forest is a steady friend, a surface that sustains without insisting on recognition. Now, imagine a patch of moss among the leaves, its tiny stalks lifted as if to receive the morning. Each stalk is like a small vial, and the felt of the moss is a sponge that slows evaporation and supports delicate bodies that do not need much but benefit from gentleness. Moss and leaf littered together make a microclimate where the day's heat is tempered and the night's coolness is softened. Insects shelter beneath, fungi weave within, and seeds land with the satisfaction of finding the right pillow. Over it all, the canopy's dapple shifts with the movements of clouds, a kind of shy spotlight that does not linger too long in any one place. When the rain falls, the leaf litter hushes the sound, breaking each drop into smaller parts, reducing impact, guarding the soil beneath from being scattered. The droplets collect, they move, they percolate, pulling along small dissolved nutrients that nestle into spaces where roots can find them later. The forest floor is a sounding board for water, not loud, but resonant, turning rainfall into a sustained resource instead of a single, quick event. When the sun returns, the escape of moisture is slowed by the same litter held longer, available for quiet work. This is how the clock stays even. The extremes are softened by layers of leaves and by the dark cushion of humus that allows the forest to avoid drama. Think for a moment about the leaf itself. During its life, it opened its pores to let carbon dioxide in and water out. It was an exchange that powered growth and cooled the leaf, a balanced economy operating in one thin sheet. Its veins distributed water mined from deep or shallow places, and returning water carried dissolved materials, messages about slightly different conditions across the leaf. Its margin curled sometimes if the air was drying, and relaxed again when humidity returned. That life is over when the leaf drops, and yet in a kindness of design, the leaf continues to function as it becomes litter. It now manages water in the opposite way, slowing its path into the ground and protecting what lies beneath. It now supports a new set of inhabitants. It now yields itself to the slow creation of soil that will sustain future leaves. The role transitions without fanfare, just as a candle can warm a room even after you stop noticing its flame. If you follow a path that curves through the trees, you notice slight differences in the leaf litter. Under some species, the litter is richer in lignin and tannins and is more resistant to quick change. Under others, it is softer, more readily integrated into the floor below. There is a quiet phenomenon here that ecologists call home field advantage, where the community of microorganisms and small animals under a certain tree gets used to its kind of litter and grows especially adept at handling it. The forest thus tunes itself to the leaves it receives, adjusting local clocks a little, not to speed or too slow in a dramatic way, but to move with familiarity. When a new species arrives, the adjustment begins gently, the community trying out new enzymes and new partnerships until the process is harmonious again. In places where people study soil for a living, they sometimes separate the forest floor into layers and measure what is in each piece. They look for the fraction that is light and easily decomposed, the fraction that is more complex, and the fraction that has joined the humus for the longer stay. They measure how much nitrogen is tied up and then released, and they comment with a slow smile about how these processes follow temperature like a piece of music follows a tempo. They sometimes bring tiny sensors to listen for the breath of the soil, the carbon dioxide that rises in a steady exhale that increases in warm, moist conditions and diminishes in cool, dry ones. They are listening to the clock tick, not with a sound, but with a gentle change in a number. The forest floor also keeps time for seeds. A seed landing on bare mineral soil might find quick passage downward, but little to hold on to. A seed landing on leaf litter finds a cushion, a humidity that stays for hours, and sometimes the exact microorganisms that tell it the place is friendly. Many seeds wait. They do not count days, but they respond to when the moisture persists and when the temperature signals spring. In that waiting, the leaf litter offers a blanket. When germination begins, the emerging root threads through the soft spaces, finding the path of least resistance and the supplies it needs. The first green above ground is fed by what the litter provided, a nourishing past lending itself to a calm beginning. Imagine a gentle breeze passing over the ground. It brushes the leaves, and the topmost ones respond with a rustle so quiet that you only hear it when everything else is still. That brush of air also lifts small bits of scent, small hints of chemistry that can tell a passing insect or a neighboring plant something about the conditions. The forest floor broadcasts subtle signals all the time, not in words, but in a bouquet that shifts with moisture, with microbial activity, with the presence of fresh leaves or a newly fallen branch. Animals with careful noses read these signals as maps. They walk with confidence where the scent says water is near or where mushrooms are maturing. They move with the forest's time, in sync with the unexciting alchemy unfolding at their feet. If a log lies across the ground, it offers its own time-keeping face. The upper surface dries and warms more easily, favoring certain kinds of slow workers. The underside remains cool and moist, inviting different companions. Along the sides, you might find the first delicate fruiting bodies of fungi, feathers of white or thin fans of brown that extend from the wood like ornaments. The log, in becoming part of the floor, changes the slow flows of water, creates windbreaks for insects, and draws in creatures that prefer shelter. The leaf litter rearranges itself around this newcomer, piling a little higher on the upstream side, thinning a little on the downstream side, always adjusting with calm. The pace of everything here is set partly by the chemistry of the leaves. Some leaves are like fine paper, rich in nutrients and short in fibers, and these draw a quick response from fungi and bacteria. Others are more like leather, with sturdy fibers that require special tools to open, and these remain longer, offering a steadier release. The forest thrives on having both, a meal that is sometimes a quick soup and sometimes a robust stew, feeding the diverse community with options. Over time, the mixture ensures that the humus is built with a balanced texture, neither too quick to disappear with a dry spell nor too resistant to change when moisture is plenty. Now, as all of this continues, imagine it is evening. The light is lower and the colors lean toward blue and gray. The air is still, the forest's day closing with the easiest final notes. The earth beneath you is warm from the day, but already releasing that warmth to the air, a gentle exchange. You can feel how the leaf litter insulates the soil, not keeping it hot, not keeping it cold, just smoothing the curves so that the roots below move through their hours with fewer jolts. The forest floor is a buffer, a negotiator, a recorder, and a generous bank all at once. The gentle rhythm continues, unbothered by the specifics of the hour. Some nights, dew collects so heavily that by morning the leaves seem lacquered. Fine droplets line the hairs of seedlings and tilt on the tips of pine needles like pearls. This gathering of water is not an event, but a continuity. The forest floor is patient. It drinks when it can. It holds what it has, and it lets go slowly. This is the same patience that allows you to feel at ease here. Time is not pressing forward. It is pooling and settling like water. When morning arrives again, the slow waking of the forest floor is not a movement of limbs, but a beginning of microcurrents. Tiny animals rise and continue their explorations. Fungi continue their silent conversations with the molecules they are changing. Bacteria find that some compartments have warmed by a degree and become a little more comfortable. The leaves wait as inert matter that is anything but idle. The smallest shift in light, in heat, in dampness encourages activity in certain corners. The result, when viewed from above, looks like stillness, but it is a soft hum. Many people think of time as a straight line moving forward across a blank page. Here, the page is textured. Here, the line curves with seasons and wraps around trunks and pools in hollows before easing forward. The forest floor makes time feel round and layered. You can touch it. You can lift a piece of it and feel the weight of weeks. You can break a crumb and see that it is built of fragments that once had names, now surrendered to being part of a larger whole. You can rest your hand there, and in doing so, you can feel the calm of a process that is at once complex and utterly untroubled by complexity. Think of how we measure this, not in seconds, but in mass and in fractions that dissolve. A bundle of leaves that was 100 units of mass in autumn might be 70 in winter, then 50 in spring, then a fine ratio as it merges into humus by summer's end. The numbers are a translation of a quiet process, the language of scales and simple geometry telling us what our senses already know. This is how scientists take notes at the pace of the forest, then return with their notebooks to stand among the trees and feel the truth of those numbers underfoot. In all of this, there is also a gentle preservation of memory. Pollen lands among the leaves and becomes part of the layers, and later, quietly read by those who know how, tells of which trees loved this place in earlier times. Layers of char from a distant, low fire become a thin record of a dry period that passed without drama. The forest floor keeps these notes without burden. They rest among the other notes that it keeps, and in no hurry are they erased or overwritten. The record is like a soft chorus behind the melody of the present. As you continue to sit here in your imagination, the feeling of comfort deepens because the processes are so steady. You can let your thoughts wander without fear that you'll miss something urgent. The mind enjoys understanding at this pace. Chemistry that sounds complicated on a page becomes intuitive when you watch how the leaf changes color and texture and then disappears. Biology that wove a mantle of fascinating detail becomes restful when you listen to insects rustle and see how their work simply makes the ground healthier. You can relax into knowing that these processes keep going despite everything else, slow and dependable. There are certain phrases that feel at home here: thermal time, moisture regime, litter quality. These are words that, despite their technical sound, belong to a very human set of observations, like noticing the way tea steeps faster in hot water, or the way a sponge holds more than a paper towel. The forest floor is the original gentle laboratory, showing these truths for as long as forests have stood. And there are small experiments that anyone can do to feel connected to this quiet science. placing a mesh bag of leaves and seeing how it changes. Burying a tea bag, then returning later to see how much lighter it is. Not as tests, not as competitions, but as ways to tune your inner metronome to the pace of the soil. There is a concept that pleases people who love trees, that of degree days, where growth begins when the sum of warm moments reaches a threshold. The forest floor has its own thresholds, soft thresholds, where microbial breath becomes a little quicker, where the threads of fungi branch more, where the animals bring more of the surface down into the darkness. No singular moment announces itself. These thresholds are not gates, but slopes. They are inclined planes where you do not know the exact point you have started to climb until you look back and see you are higher. Halfway through this unhurried walk together, if you are still with me and enjoying the calm, I will invite a tiny bit of play. Still awake? Comment the secret word, nebula. Back on the ground, the forest's pulse continues. You can imagine now the way roots and fungal threads make aggregates in the soil, clusters of particles that are more than the sum of their parts, like small granola pieces bound by honey. These aggregates resist being washed away. They hold water in a gentle way, and they create a structure that air can move through. This structure is tender. It stays strong when the forest floor is healthy and can be disturbed if the surface is stripped or crushed. But under the blanket of leaf litter, it is protected. The quiet chemistry of glues produced by organisms holds it together, and roots and hyphae stitch it like fine thread that never breaks suddenly, only slowly, and then only to be repaired elsewhere. It is soothing to think about how light that once fell on a green surface becomes the energy that drives this alchemy. The leaf captured photons and used them to tie carbon into useful shapes. Those shapes now fuel the organisms that untie the knots and pass the pieces along. The energy is spent in the tiniest of heat pulses and in the building of new molecules that become part of bodies that move with their own small purposes. This is the great loop experienced as a hush. A forest at night, if you could sense the faintest warmth that comes from respiration, and the most subtle movement of molecules would feel like the slowest, most complete sigh. The timing of all this is guided by the shape of a year and also by other more intimate calendars. A dry spell that lasts a week is a lullaby of pause. A sudden rain wakes everyone without rousing them to hurry, just to continue. The first frost asked the fungi to rest near the surface and do more of their work deeper where the earth is warmer. The thaw invites a gentle resumption. On a yearly scale, you can set your watch by these things and find comfort in their reliability. On a daily scale, you can come and sit and notice a few small differences from morning to evening. Nothing more, and that is enough. Sometimes in a patch of forest, a fresh layer of leaves overlays one that is only partially shifted. The overlap creates a 2-year memory you can touch. The upper layer is crisp and spacious, with small chambers where air lingers. The lower layer is soft and integrated, of felt. Sliding your hand between them, you feel time as texture. The upper resistance gives way to the lower compliance, and in that transition, your senses recognize a year, as surely as if you had watched the calendar pages turn. In a few places, you may see mushrooms pushing up through the leaf litter, a sudden rounded form that looks like a modest punctuation mark in the text of the forest. These fruiting bodies are only a moment of the organism, which is otherwise a web of persistence below. Their arrival corresponds to the time when the conditions above ground and below ground agree that there is moisture to spare and temperatures that are kind. The mushrooms carry spores into the air, where they ride the gentle currents until they find another place where leaf and moisture and substrate align. In this way, even the expansion of fungi happens in the same unhurried mode. There is no rush to colonize, only a readiness to meet opportunity when it arrives. The small vertebrates of the forest, the ones that tiptoe or hop or skitter with care, use the leaf litter as their main passageways. It muffles their steps and hides them. It offers seeds to nibble and invertebrates to find. Their presence warms the top layer for the briefest seconds. Their droppings are quietly integrated. When they curl for rest, they use a depression the way you might use a blanket's fold to make a pillow. Their schedules do not disturb the clock of the floor. They are instead its readers, its beneficiaries. As day after day, the clock turns like this. The shrubs and seedlings that grow here perform their own timekeeping. Some are evergreen at the leaf level, obviously so, but even they shed older leaves, adding them to the litter at less dramatic times of year. Others are deciduous and follow the familiar parade of seasons. The balance of species in a stand affects how much litter falls each year and when. Over long periods, shifts in that composition are recorded in the layers. The forest floor is thus both the current processing center and the archive, rich with slow maps of what has been. It is simple to see, too, how human actions touch this clock. When people rake and remove leaves in managed spaces, the flow is altered and the ground relies on other inputs. When they leave leaves to rest, the process is allowed to proceed as it does in the forest, and the soil remains soft, moist, and welcoming. There is a quiet wisdom in letting leaves do their work, whether under street trees or in a backyard corner. It is a small kindness that follows the habits of the forest, extends the calm into the places where we live, makes a little soil that smells like peace. Sitting longer, you realize that what the forest floor does for the trees, it also does for you as a listener. It moderates your own internal weather, smoothing a hurried mind into something that moves more like the slow current of a creek. It holds your attention without gripping it. It offers details at a scale that is easy to hold, then invites you to wander away for a few seconds and return without loss. This is the unexciting alchemy of a soothing topic. You are welcome to let your thoughts drift while the gentle rhythm continues. The floor of the forest does not mind if you close your eyes or open them. Its work is the same, and it is happy to be your lullaby. Sometimes a small seedling will bend a leaf edge and rise along it, using the leaf litter like a tutor that shows how to stand up. Its stem is thin, its first leaves small, and yet it is not fragile when it is supported by the texture around it. The leaf litter guides it through frost by maintaining a little warmth, through dryness by holding a little water, and through midday heat by shading the soil. This is the kindness of the floor. It nurtures without calling attention to itself. It makes a place into a home for the next layer of life. If a person were to dig gently and collect a sample of the humus, then look at it under a microscope, they would see an incredible texture of past and present. Bits of leaves are now only fragments of cell walls. The walls themselves are now only traces, punctuated by openings where cell contents once moved. The spaces between are filled with a mix of minute particles and threads. Water moves through this complex like someone ambling through a crowd at a relaxed festival. Plenty of room, plenty of give. Air also arrives, filling pockets, feeding the breath of the living below. The humus acts as a sponge for nutrients, holding cations with a friendly grip that can be loosened when a root arrives, much like a parent letting a child take a cookie from a jar without needing to let go of the jar entirely. This exchange does not require a rush or a fuss. It is simply available. Over the decades, a portion of the carbon from leaves and wood and life remains in the soil, calming the climate above by being simply here in the quiet dark, not eager to return to the air. The forest is not a vault, not a bank with strict rules. It is more like a series of rooms where guests stay for different lengths of time. Some stay a day, some a season, some longer. The rooms are comfortable. The guests are molecules, and they come and go with a flowing courtesy. The carbon that lingers lends stability. The rest continues the cycle. It is a balance you feel, even if you do not calculate it. The forest floor is also an artist in wood. A fallen twig, a small branch, even a whole trunk in time are softened and integrated. The color of the wood pales or darkens depending on the organisms that visit it. Patterns appear on its surface as fungi move within. The surface sometimes grows a gentle fuzz, a memory of the world below extended above. The wood's rings open like a book's pages. Ants and beetles make galleries that are precise to them and decorative to us. What was once stiff and resonant becomes mellow and pliable. Nothing about this is rapid. It is a long, careful crafting of material into nourishment and structure. You can see how the forest floor, without announcing itself, is the quiet maker of springs that keep running through dry weeks, the buffer that keeps streams clearer by holding back soil, the cushion that supports countless small steps, the nest that shelters new beginnings. It is easier to rest well knowing that such a broad, faithful system is in place all around. The beauty here is not ornate. It is subtle, made of patterns that repeat, lines that blur into pleasant backgrounds, and the sound of distant leaves turning themselves into comfort. As you breathe, you might match the pace of this place. Inhale as you imagine the canopy pulling in sunlight and making sugar. Exhale as you imagine the forest floor letting go of carbon dioxide in a patient exhale. Inhale with the thought of rain being held like a gift. Exhale with the thought of moisture slipping downward as it should. The balance that the forest floor maintains becomes a balance you can borrow for sleep. It is allowed. The gentle rhythm continues. If you were to tell someone later about what you experienced, you could say you learned that leaves become soil, and that in becoming soil, they make time visible and touchable. You could say you were with fungi and insects and bacteria and roots, all of them very polite, very quiet neighbors. You could say that the forest holds itself together not with cords and clamps, but with affection formed in chemistry and the comfortable habit of cycles. You could say that the most important things happening were also the least urgent, and that this was a relief. As the light fades and a final stillness arrives, you can imagine the forest floor filing another page in its archive. Today's slight differences in temperature, the brief afternoon breeze, the small shower that never quite reached the ground in all places, all these are recorded in how the litter settled in what was moved a few centimeters to a new place, in the moist edge of a folded leaf. You release the need to remember the particulars because the forest has it, not as memory with words, but as a comfortable continuity that needs no retelling. Soon you will rest, and the forest floor invites you to let your mind place itself among the leaves and feel the coolness and the softness, to hear the near silent work continue in the background. The unexciting alchemy will carry on while you drift. The gentle rhythm continues. Before you let go, feel free to tap like and subscribe if this slow journey brought you calm, so we can keep making these quiet stories and offer them as a nightly place to rest. You are safe, you are supported, and the forest floor is keeping time for you, steady and warm. May your night be soft and your dreams unhurried, and may you wake when you are ready, gently, to a world that moves with patience.